what we came up with, oh, great. So what we came up with was the idea of a communications toolkit. So in the playbook, you talk a lot about, specific ways that libraries can communicate, like you should have an MOU, right? We also thought about things like presenting on the results to your local chamber. And we thought, well, can we give people not just letting them know what they should do or what types of things they should do, but actually give them some templates, right? Like actually give them here's a sample MOU. Here's a presentation that you can stick your library's brand on, right? And change the colors and go ahead and make that presentation to really make it easy for libraries to get the word out in their own communities. So giving them some of those tools as a complement to the playbook and as a dissemination tool for the playbook. Megan, anything else that how did I do on that? Anything else that I should have said about what we're doing, what the project is?
I think that's right. Yeah, thank you.
So what we really want to do here with this group is starting with that basis of we're looking to make a communications toolkit with templates and tools based on the playbook. We want to know, what should that look like? That's a really broad idea. So what should go in there? What can libraries adapt for their own use? And these are the questions we'll be discussing. So like, what are the most important points, right? There's a lot in that playbook. So as we're kind of giving people talking points, press releases, presentations, like what are the things that you think absolutely need to be highlighted? How do you imagine libraries might use some of these tools? If for those of you who are in a library, how would you use them? And what would you want to accomplish with them? So we're going to use a little collaborative note-taking tool for this so that you can participate in a variety of ways here. So I'm going to just pop a link into the chat. Everyone should be able to follow that to Jamboard. And you should be able to add. Okay, seeing people pop in, great. Can I just see like who's used a Jamboard before? Okay, so like half and half. There's a toolbar that for me shows up on the left-hand side of the screen. And in the middle of that toolbar is a picture of a little sticky note. So if you click on that, a sticky note box pops up and you can type an idea or type something in there and just hit enter, save, and it will post it to the board. So you can see and just pop the sticky up there. So I'm going to be taking notes on this Jamboard as we talk, but also you can add to this directly. So if you think of something, you can go ahead and pop it in there in your own words. If you're a person who writes and thinks before and processes before you talk, you can do that. You can contribute here before instead of speaking up. So let's just start with the conversation. From the playbook, right? From all of the work that you did, what are the things that you wish every library or every community member knew? Like if a librarian is out talking to someone and they can only get one point across from the playbook, what should it be?
Audrey, I have a suggestion. Several of us are small business coaches, but not for businesses for other public libraries. I've recently talked to several different library systems, two here in South Carolina, one in North Carolina. And what we told them was you have to scale what you're trying to do and start with one service that you can do well. And then once you have that under your belt, build on that success. An example is a library in North Carolina closed their job center and they want to reopen, but with a new vision, and they also want to add business services. So what the team suggested was, okay, well, what did you do best? Start with that and then grow from there.
Yeah. Start with what you do best and grow, scale up. Absolutely. And that makes me think, like, can we give people some kind of prototyping process of like identify something you do well, do it. What did you learn? Like kind of a, how might you expand it? Kind of giving people maybe a sort of a journaling tool or like a reflection and planning tool. Awesome. I'm also, Diane, something I heard in there is like, get help. Like you're coaching other libraries. So so that reminding people that you are a tool, right? That there are more experienced libraries out there that are so willing to share and help.
I think something and related to what Diane said is like how important outreach to the business community is. So helping libraries recognize that they already have a lot of what the business community needs, even if they don't have a specialized program. So business communities need just a place to work in some cases, or the Wi-Fi connection or the public computers. So you already have all of those resources. It's just a matter of like spreading the word to in the right places. So I think that's related, is like, even if you're just starting with having like a public space to meet, or a place to meet and public access to the computers and the Wi-Fi, that is a business service. And so doing the outreach as well is an important piece of that.
I'm going to piggyback on what Megan just said. One of our important parts for the Entrepreneurial Launchpad is the community partners that we interact with. And what I try to tell the mentees that I work with, you have so much expertise in your community. So let's get together here and make a list of who those people are. What can they offer? What can you offer them? You don't have to do it all by yourself. And that came to light because we last summer offered a summer entrepreneur in residence program. We usually have one in the spring and one in the fall, but we didn't have enough money for the summer. And the city OBO, Office of Business Opportunities, reached out and said, we have extra money. Do you have a project you want to work on? And we said, well, of course we do. Well, that worked out really well. They just granted us the second round of summer entrepreneurship for the EIR. So it worked well once, and it worked for them too. It was a win-win. They were on TV, they were on the radio, they were on LinkedIn, they were on Facebook. So the city got a lot of mileage also out of having that person come and talk about services. So in fact, they're having a big holiday drop-in tonight, and it's like the community is not that big. And you need to get those players together if you want to, move forward. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
So one thing I think is really important is to understand what business owners and entrepreneurs might be looking for, and having a balance between doing some general exploration and gaining kind of general understanding about what information needs or space needs or technology needs might be out there, but then also really specialized local exploration. So whether that is having those conversations with partners about what they're seeing their constituents asking for, searching for, dilemmas they're having, and also talking with business owners directly. And it can be challenging, challenging to figure out what questions to ask. When you say, what could the library offer you? There's usually a very narrow scope that people are thinking about that the library could offer. So, having broader learning conversations around, tell me about, where you're really thriving and what you're really struggling with, and, what your vision for your business is 3 years from now, and really getting business owners and entrepreneurs to just share what they're loving, struggling with, and where they want to go, and identifying how the library can be not only a resource provider, but a connector to make, maybe the partners are already offering, some solutions to some of those dilemmas that the library could just lift up and share, make more visible. We don't necessarily have to provide all the services, but can be connectors to it.
Yeah. And so I love that as library as information provider and as connector. Yeah. And something I also pulled from that is the idea maybe of giving people like a script or some questions, so that when they have those conversations with partners, so they're encouraged to do that, to talk with business owners, to talk with with potential partners, and some questions that they can ask, so they don't have that moment of like, what do you want from the library? Oh, more hours, more books? Okay. but to have those really meaningful learning conversations. Yeah, it's great. Anything else? Any other like key takeaways or things where you're like, oh, someone just walks away with like one or two things from this report. Like, I really want it to be this.
I think something that comes up, and this, was addressed by Diane in that first point she made about scaling and starting with what you already have is yeah, but we don't have money, and yeah, but we don't have staff. So if there is, maybe a visual of how the same thing could be offered with, limited funds and then mega donation, and even staffing, like different staffing models or community engagement, like sharing how things can be possible at different price points and requiring different levels of time and investment of people power.
I totally agree with Adriana. 3 examples. We have SC codes coming January through March, and they're going to be doing some programming and classes for us. We also found out that SCORE South Carolina did a nonprofit series virtually. We're meeting with them on the 13th of December. They said, what parts of this do you think that your customers would most appreciate? Because we get lots of questions about nonprofits. The third thing is we have the SBDC and the SBA, 3 men, and we have a community partners call once a month. So on the call yesterday, they said, the 3 of them, you tell us what the key topics are. We'll plan an entire year of business programming for you. So I said, woo. And the word that comes to mind is free. Because, some of these other organizations, they have great programming, but it comes at a cost. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that we see are either solopreneurs, they're micro business owners, they may be a hobbyist who is in the process of turning their hobby into a career. They don't have that extra money. So, the fact that we are providing reliable, authoritative programming for free, I think is something that everyone should realize and appreciate, because public libraries are not the public libraries that people remember from the past. There are exciting things going on all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good reminder that to continue just like making sure people know the basics, right? We offer, like you said, reliable, authoritative programming for free, right? And remembering that a lot of folks in our business community, especially, still aren't thinking of the library that way. It's having that kind of thing for them.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point that we might want to highlight for our partners and kind of business community. Not so much for the libraries, but like, so in the initiative highlights report, we had a page about this or a box about this, but really just a rundown of like, libraries do all these amazing things. And Diane was on a podcast where people were just shocked that libraries did anything beyond like check out books for kids. And they had invited her on to talk about entrepreneurship, but they were still just floored that anything happened besides like story time. So I think even some of that for our external stakeholders and audience is really important. Just, we think it's so basic that we don't even talk about it enough, but like, hey, did you know that digital literacy happens in every library in the country, or basic workforce programs happen in every library in the country, that libraries have printers and, even like just really basic, what we think of as basic equipment like printers or specialized Adobe software and things like that. I think starting at that kind of ground level actually would be really important for some of our audiences.
Hey, Audrey, it's not just our library, but Richland Library has an entrepreneurial library of things, but we are not alone. There are other public libraries in the US that are also working with that initiative to test out equipment, also to check out possibilities for starting a business, like 2 cameras, gonna, film an event, get paid for it. Then I bring the cameras back and then I purchase my own to start my own business. who would ever think? I mean, when I was growing up, it was like check out a library book, but there are just so many opportunities. People just need to be encouraged to go to their local library and find out what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just that message of go to your library and find out what's happening. It's true. For a long time, I worked in a library where we had one woman who was like really got known in the community as the business librarian. It wasn't her, her specialty. It was just an area of interest for her, and she'd been a business owner herself previously. And we would have people come in all the time and be like, "They said I need to come in here and talk to Peggy. I don't know why. Like, I don't know what my question is. Just I'm starting a business and I need to talk to Peggy." Yeah. So, well, let's move on to the next question, and feel free to come back to this or to throw ideas of your own onto the Jamboard as well. But now let's talk about how what a library's goals might be in using a communication toolkit. So before we get too into like the nitty gritty of what specific pieces, but we've talked about like what topics people might want to know. But now, so you're a library, you get handed a communications toolkit, to accompany your playbook. If you're in a library, like what do you think you would want to accomplish with that? What would you be hoping to do with it? If you are working with libraries, ALA folks, like how are you imagining libraries might use a communications toolkit, or what their goals would be? And I see that someone's already popped an idea in here to increase small business or tech program registration numbers and resource utilization. Yeah, absolutely. So getting more people aware of and coming to your program. Mm-hmm.
Audrey, the other thing I think, to present a consistent message, like at Richland, we have 13 locations. Everyone in the cohort had a differing number, but you want to have the small business message consistent no matter which location in the system you visit. So having these tools, if you want to do a display or work with a partner and have that MOU, it should have that consistency so that you're all on the same page. It's not like one place is doing one thing, another place or another location is doing something different.
Totally. That's an excellent point. The ability to present a consistent message. Mm-hmm.
I think it's an opportunity for sort of a local level advocacy, and that's my PPA lens, of course, but like, this is really a way for libraries to showcase what they do best to their partners, potential funders, maybe local decision makers. And so I think that consistency in the message is important, but really getting better at talking about like the successes and the new programs and the great opportunities that come out of the library. Because I think it comes back to like not being aware that so many of our community members and partners really aren't aware of what's going on or what the library offers. So this is just this is a way to kind of better advocate for the library and get future support and funding and partnerships and all of that.
Yeah. So there's that immediate like raising awareness among most stakeholders goal. And then there's the longer term of like doing that so that in the future you can get funding, you can get support, you can have partners. Yeah.
I think a unique element too that we could include here would be communications that are coming in the other direction, like into the library. So what are some tools that we can share for libraries to offer opportunities to business owners, to partners, to the community to share what they're looking for, what they need, what they've seen in other locations that would be valuable. So I haven't seen, communications tools that are designed for that kind of direction for communication to flow. But I think that is really important in this area where I don't know that all libraries want to be business experts, but experts in connecting people to business experts, and who are those, local resources, local folks that library staff should know about and be connected to.
Can you say more about what you might imagine some tools looking like that would help facilitate that communication in?
Yeah, so we have used different polls and online forms for, like if people are requesting materials and they want to make a suggestion to the library, might there be a format, a survey or a poll or a form that is useful for collecting information from the community? Are there focus group opportunities or learning conversations that you touched on one example, Audrey, of having scripts, right, for asking powerful questions that give us meaningful information to understand and learn. So that could be included here. Focus groups might be like at the higher level. For in my library, we're going through a major renovation and building a space that would function as a co-working space. So how do you gather input from stakeholders that would be using that space, promoting that space, and what kinds of questions would you ask in a small group or one-on-one to gain input there? So, it could be scenario focused or more general in sharing ideas.
Thank you. Awesome. And that's a great example of getting input on the co-working space. Wow. Yeah.
Jazzy, not to put you on the spot, but Jazzy has a lot of experience with our state and local advocacy and communications, and she's done some communications toolkits. So no pressure if you don't have any new ideas, but if you have any ideas we haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear.
No, I kind of added a note to the third question about putting like some sample social media and graphics together.
That's a great one. Yeah. So are there ways, like, can you reflect on some of the ways that you've seen libraries using communications toolkits, whether, regardless of the topic, like some of the goals that you see that libraries have, or some of the interesting ways that people are using them that we should be thinking about?
I don't think of anything unique, I suppose. I put the note in about increasing program numbers.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I used to do comms for a public library, and one of the biggest problems was getting people to register for programs.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, maybe this is a good moment to transition into the third question. We can bounce back and forth between them. But so, given what we've talked about, right, the things that we hope that people will take away, that we want to focus on in the information we want to focus on, the goals that we think that you might have, or that you think libraries might have. What are the tools that would be helpful here? What kinds of things might we include? So we've got some of the things that have come up already. Polls and online forms, some kind of planning tool to help you recognize what you do well and scale it up, and some kind of asset mapping tool to help you find something like outreach tools, like helping you identify partners and figure out how you're going to reach out to them, scripts for talking to people. What else? What are some things if you were going to get a communications toolkit to help your library get the word out about its small business services? What would you want to be in there? What would be helpful to you?
Not sure exactly what this would look like, but the community partner piece, I am working with a new manager here at the library, and we were talking about community partners. And so she was kind of reticent to reach out. And I said, oh, no. I said, they need to know what you do. So I think you have to have a set of expectations when you're going to ask someone to collaborate or partner with you. And it would be helpful to know what you're asking of them. What does that look like? And what would be the benefit for both parties when you are partnering or collaborating, just so they can see the benefit right there.
Mhm. So some way to summarize the benefit of partnering with a library on business work, programs. Summarize benefit. Excellent. Yeah, so what else? So it's interesting, I'm like seeing a distinction that's starting to come up too about like the communication with patrons, essentially like with business owners or with the community versus tools that we need for communicating with potential partners. They might kind of have a set of tools for each.
Well, like Adriana said, a lot of these people, you know, the libraries that we're working with, they don't have large budgets, or they don't have a budget, and they don't have staff. You know, I have several people I've talked with that are the only person. And so, you know, how do they get help? Can they rely on volunteers? Can they generate interest within their own library system to find a couple of other staff members who may want to be on a be business ready team? What would that look like? What would they be responsible for? And I think the other thing is, you know, if you're either a middle level staff member or, you know, a manager of a location, you have to get buy-in from admin. So that's the other thing. They need to see the importance of how this will better the community. It will also change the way the community looks at the table. We had an entrepreneur in residence who told us when she was here in 2019, she said the library deserves to sit at that table. Some people may not think so, but she said, if you look at all of the resources and the way that libraries break down barriers, she said, you are an important member at that table. So that's what the public library needs to see itself as, an important member. And as Adriana said, the connector.
Yeah.
Because I think we do that job very well.
So some of what you said I captured on the goals sheet as well, that maybe part of the goal of this is we're changing the way that the community looks at the library, and that we are trying to make sure the library has a place at the table, right? For those when the community at large is talking about small business and the economy.
Yeah, I think the capacity piece is really important. So for libraries that want to connect with their Chamber of Commerce or local small business partners, it can be a little daunting. So really having the talking points prepared. I've heard from several people, like they went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting and everyone was like, why are you here? And so just having kind of that case prepared already, I think would be empowering, and also just help to build capacity for small libraries that aren't that want to make connections and then can build capacity, but need that first kind of that boost at first, even to get going with building partnerships and stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
a key goal is,
go ahead.
so I was just reflecting back, a key goal is building capacity. Yeah, go ahead, Adriana.
Yeah, I was thinking about whether we've touched on this yet or not, which is kind of defining elements and using those definitions to build strategy. So like what Megan said, you know, in a conversation with the chamber, why are you here? Well, there might be several different reasons why you're approaching that conversation. So if your goal is to just learn about the chamber, and you know, that may be valuable for a library that has limited staffing, that like, I can't build a big collaboration with them right now. I just don't have the time. But I know it's valuable just to understand what they're all about, what they're offering, so that we can, you know, connect people at the library. Is your goal to move toward collaboration, you know, and how might the conversation look a little bit different, or might that be multiple conversations? Is your goal to request something? And same thing, like what is the goal, then what would be the strategy to get there? I think about that for conversations and also for marketing, where we have a marketing coordinator on our staff who is so skilled at having these conversations with programming staff around strategy for marketing. It's not fill in the blanks, like you do a press release and social media, all platforms, post and website and email blast, etc. You don't do all those things for all the things, for all the programs, but you think about who the target audience is that you want to reach with specific messaging and customize your marketing strategy. So might there be some definitions or kind of like 101 elements within this communication toolkit around conversations, learning conversations, and I would have to go back to the playbook to see if we kind of spelled some of those details out, and we could build off of those as like the communications toolkit really fits within the playbook as offering strategy and then specific tools to match those strategies for learning conversations and community engagement distinct from marketing.
That is an excellent point. So not just thinking about the elements individually, but what are the pathways? Like when would you use a particular element depending on who you're serving and what your goal is? Maybe structuring the whole thing around that, or providing kind of a map. Says like, if you're trying to do this, you might want to use the tools on pages 9, 12, and 47. Yeah, that's really cool. I really
I
like
think
that.
one other
holistic
thing that
perspective.
we should add to what Adriana just mentioned is funding, because you're going to hear from a lot of libraries, well, we don't have any funds for that. And to show them the importance of grants and being able to fund a program solely by using grants. I know for ourselves, our Entrepreneur Residence program started out with a Google grant. We had the LBB grant we are very grateful for. We just picked up a Wells Fargo grant, and then the City of Columbia gave us one, and now they're giving us another. So even though the library says, we're in a hiring freeze and, we had $1.1 million slash from our budget, we're still moving forward because we're not relying on library money. So I guess the creativity of using grants, and there may be other funding sources. You may have an entrepreneur in your community that wants to give back. Maybe they're even a celebrity entrepreneur. There are ways that you can find money other than just going through the library budget.
Absolutely. So from a communication standpoint, what kind of tools do you think would help people feel empowered to pursue that funding? Like a sample LOI comes to mind, or I don't know, an email template, or what are some of the tools that we might put in a communications toolkit that would help people with that?
I think the email is important, but I think even before they do that, they need to brainstorm with whoever is working with them to come up with a list of who these people might be. Think about all of the people that contribute to this success, the business success in the community. Who are those people? How do we reach them? What would they be interested in knowing about the library? You might be doing a little bit of, on the road, or going to a meeting that they offer. Like you said, the chamber, they really have to see the value, I believe, of what we're trying to develop, and then get them on board. I do like the idea too of the PowerPoint template, because sometimes people are not very creative. So if they can just plug in their own information, it would save them a lot of time. And if they say, oh, I'm not creative at all, well, you don't have to be. All you have to do is type in the text that's applicable to you, and then it's ready to go.
Excellent. And then similarly, I think Jazzy, this might have been you, templates for newsletter blurbs or blog posts. So sort of similar to a PowerPoint template or an email template.
That wasn't me, but it is a good idea.
Other tools that are coming to mind?
One thing that has come up in our library is policies around programming with business owners and just how the library cannot subsidize advertising for business owners and how to navigate that fine line of providing information education around a business or a journey of entrepreneurship, but not focusing on like selling products or soliciting customers within the library. So yeah, even, you know, references to policy examples that address those elements would be valuable.
Great point. Yeah. So we still have time, so I'd love to talk through one more question, which is who should we help? Should we encourage libraries to reach out to if we're going to give people a sample listing, right? That's saying here are some possible partners in your community that you could use this with, right? Here are some, here are some folks that you might want to reach out to for those learning conversations. Obviously, there will be lots of differences from community to community, but either large organizations or things where there are types, right, of organizations that tend to be in a community. Who should libraries use a communications toolkit to reach out to communicate with?
Well, for sure, local, state, and national business-related organizations. Like we have, for example, the South Carolina Small Business Development Centers. We have SCORE. We have something called South Carolina Business One Stop, the SBA. I mean, all of those people should be on the list. But then on a local level, we have the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, the Richland County Office of Small Business Opportunities. We have a whole list. So we made this handout. It's called Small Business and Self-Employment. And then the other thing is during the pandemic, we created a Facebook group, which started out with 3 people. It was the entrepreneur residents at that time and 2 library staff that were moderators. And now we have over 2,500 people as part of that group. And that's another way that people can find out what's happening at your local public library in terms of small business programming, grants. People are not allowed to promote their own business, but they can certainly talk about upcoming trainings. And, I'm sure all communities have this, but again, it's a wealth of free, that reliable information. Even AARP is doing a digital skill series here, and they're talking about using Venmo is this week's program. So, you have to evaluate, like Adriana said, the surveys, find out what your community needs, and then you build on that. I mean, because, like, for example, if my community doesn't care about those kinds of things, we're just wasting our time. But if they say, I need to market my business, how can you help me with that? That's when you start customizing. And I think you'll have better return rate in attendance, better feedback. And here we use the customer comments at budget time. We go to the Richland County Council and have some of our customers speak on behalf of the library. So that's another way to generate very positive feedback from the community.
Excellent. So I pulled a lot out of what you said. So that last one, right? You mentioned the county council, so your local legislators, starting with community needs and using that to guide who you're going to reach out to. So that kind of goes back to that pathways idea that Adriana was sharing.
Here's one example, Audrey.
Mhm.
So Jim Clyburn is a congressman here from Columbia, and he's very well known nationally. His wife used to be a librarian. Unfortunately, she passed a few years ago. But when we launched Libraries Build Business, he was actually contacted and quoted to say what was the importance of what public libraries are doing. And he brought up the fact that his own wife was a librarian. Those are the kinds of things I think that get people's attention.
Yeah, so I think something there that you're highlighting as well is giving people a chance to think about who are their natural advocates, like who are the people who already have ties both to the library and to the business, who can be their early adopters, right? If you're a congressperson who is married to a librarian, right, has a foot in both those worlds. So looking for those kind of natural connectors. Seeing lots of ideas popped onto the Jamboard as well: small business incubators, universities, chambers of commerce, co-working spaces. Excellent. Yeah, government organizations administering funding, statewide business agencies, both government and nonprofit. What else? Who might libraries want to connect with that maybe they wouldn't think about or wouldn't be sure how to approach?
Well, if you're working with the teen community, we took a course in teachers of entrepreneurship. And here in Columbia, we have something called R2I2. So it's a high school. We have one of our locations built into that building, but they provide all kinds of real life experiences in business, startup, and growth. And so I think that's been a wonderful thing to be able to get to the teen community, because we just had a middle school group come in, and there were some kiddos, there were 22. We asked them how many of them had ever thought about starting their own business. A couple of them raised their hands, but there's a little girl, well, she's not so little now, but she and her mom came up with something called Gabby's Bows. Her bows were always falling out of her hair. So she and her mom came up with an idea how they would stay, and they were pretty and whatever. Well, they sell them in Walmart now and other places, and they've made a really nice life for this young lady. She's going to go to college, but I mean, I'm sure there are other, ideas for being a serial entrepreneur rolling around in her head. So just, again, you just have to see what resources your community can offer, because every one of them is unique, and everyone has something to offer.
Absolutely. And I captured youth as well, right, from that. And in addition to the idea of, uniqueness and everyone has something to offer, I think you also captured, youth. I'm seeing some things pop up: women's and immigrant organizations. So thinking about who are the cultural groups in your community, or the various types of groups and identities in your community, and how do you work with and adapt to them? So let's go back up to kind of like the 10,000 foot level and just say, are there any other thoughts that you've had along the way about a communications toolkit to support disseminating the amazing ideas in the playbook? Anything else that should be on the radar? Anything that you want to see included? Anything that you think is important to surface? Or just anything that sort of like popped into your head that you didn't want to say at the moment because it was off topic and that you want to make sure gets surfaced?
I think one thing that's important, you can share the information and give ideas, but having the stories of how these have made an impact is really important, because people can see the practical advantage and say, oh, okay, they used it that way. Now I understand. Or, yeah, what a great idea. I never thought of it in that way. And I think throughout the playbook, we have lots of instances how people used a variety of tools to make whatever their program was that they were doing successful. And of course, the programs were super different. They dealt with women, justice involved, tribal community. I mean, you name it. But I love the stories. I think it gives it that personalized touch.
I think that's excellent. That's really important, and making sure that when we're doing things like putting together talking points, putting together PowerPoint presentation, right, that it's not just here are the numbers, here's the information, but that those stories play a really prominent role.
It's the human element.
Yeah.
I really want to be sure that our equity lens comes through. I think a huge reason that libraries are and should be involved in small business development and entrepreneurship initiatives is because it's it makes small business more equitable. It creates opportunity, it creates capital for people that are under-resourced or marginalized. And so I think kind of creating a talking point for talking with partners, that's kind of like, this is why we're involved. This is something that's important about building a diverse and thriving local small business community is equity, and the library can really leverage that and create more equitable circumstances.
Yeah. I love that. Just like that's a talking point in itself right there, right? Libraries contribute to a diverse and thriving small business community.
Audrey, I'm sure Adriana wouldn't do this, but I'm going to praise her. She did a presentation, that had to deal with equity. I thought that was outstanding. So if we can incorporate some of those elements, I think that would be really helpful. Things to think about, when you're using these tools and why you're using them.
Adriana, would you mind sharing any of that?
I don't remember what it was exactly. I'm thinking you're referring to LibLearnX, and we really just spelled out what kind of like diversity, equity, and inclusion 101, and defining what the different pieces were. Is that what it was, Diane?
Yes, and I think some people don't have a clue. I think that it's very important to put those ideas on the table. I think you were very eloquent when you spoke about that particular topic. So yeah, if we can incorporate some of those ideas too, I think it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so we have a chapter in the book, not the play. I mean, the playbook probably includes it. We didn't review it before today. And, I think drawing threads between the content, the stories, the definitions within the playbook to the communications or to the toolkit will then be so valuable as like this add-on that brings all of these pieces together. This is just a side note, not really a summarizing statement, but I was thinking back to, who we should reach out to, and thinking about how other library staff are such great resources. So Audrey, you pointed out the coaches, LBB coaching, that's certainly one important one. And then the Slack community that Megan continues to build. And then the other piece is two things. One, just reaching out to libraries that are near you, like in your region, and working on building like regional partnerships, and not having to have all of the answers, but one, being aware of what other regional libraries are offering and maybe what their strength is, so that what you offer can complement it, and you can work together to promote these multiple things that if we're a team, we can share out together. And then two, state library organizations that can not only be advocates and promoters, but can also start resourcing libraries with funding and concerted efforts. And there have been a variety of initiatives that have been brought up through LBB of statewide initiatives. So I can't remember if we mentioned that piece within our different sticky notes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so I've captured that. I'm hopping around on the boards here. So I've captured that in a few different places on who we should reach out to and any important things to cover. And Megan popped a quote of yours in the chat as well about DEI.
Yeah, we use that on social media. I don't remember which presentation that was from, Adriana, but our social media person pulled that out and we were using it on social media to talk about libraries build business.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts in our last couple of minutes?
Audrey, just more of like a practical as we think about prioritizing some of these, and I'm sure we'll have follow-up conversation. Thinking about what's most, the highest priority for you and what you can build, and then also like other priorities that maybe our team can fully develop. Like, so Jazzy has a lot of experience with creating the communications toolkits and is here to support as well. So I just wanted to say that, like, we are here to kind of support. Once we kind of figure out what the priorities are, because I know we just brainstormed a lot of really cool stuff that I'm excited about. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. So next steps will be, I'm going to take this and sit with it for a while and kind of go through and look for themes and things that are bubbling up. And I'll come back to Megan and propose kind of a table of contents, basically, and say, like, here are the things that that we might want to, to put together. And then we'll have some conversations about what you want me to build, what it makes sense for you to build, and maybe if there are things, it sounds like you said, like, well, Adriana already has a beautiful way of saying this, right? Or there might be things from the LBB cohort that people want to, or can easily contribute, from their own successful presentations, for example. So we can decide what you want me to build, what you want ALE to build, and what we want to crowdsource with credit to the fabulous people who are out there doing the work.
Yeah, sounds good.
Does that sound good to everyone? Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for your for all of your input, your wisdom. It's always really energizing to hear about the exciting things that people are doing and the exciting things you're thinking about. And I'm getting really jazzed about helping to support libraries and continue to elevate awareness of the book and the playbook in new ways.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Adriana and Diane, for joining and sharing your perspectives from LBB. Thank you, Jazzy and Jim, for jumping in on the dissemination piece too. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you. And my contact information is up on the screen. So if anything comes to you later, you have any questions, or if I can be of help in any way, go ahead and reach out.
Great.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm very excited. This was fun.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was fun, and it definitely got me thinking about some things that I think I wouldn't necessarily have thought of otherwise, or thinking about how this will all sort of come together and be organized in exciting ways. So
Yeah, very exciting. I'm so glad that a couple of the LBB people could come, because just that perspective is so important. So that was great. And I would just also, you already have it, but to bring in the external or the initiative highlights report as well, because that has some of that like ground level talking points, like libraries have, computers or whatever.
yeah.
So maybe just keeping that in mind as another resource as you're thinking about these. But yeah, I thought that was great and super fun. So thank you.
Excellent. All right. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. And I'll cook on this for a while and get back to you with some proposals.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.